Hello and welcome to the MacGuffin and
The Red Herring.
I'm the MacGuffin.
And I'm the Red Herring.
And we're here to discuss Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power. I think the show suffers.
And I love it.
So there's a lot of hater rants out there and there's a handful of people that enjoy it. And so we're here to discuss both. Hope you like what we have to say. And if not, let us know in the comments. This week's episode of The MacGuffin and the Red Herring brought to you by Ye Old Gym, personal training and online fitness coaching. Find us on Instagram. All right, welcome to Rings of Power episode 3. For those of you wondering why I do all the intros, he doesn't want to. So, you're stuck with me. All right, let's hit play. Let's talk about how pale these orcs are. I said, honestly, like, artistically, I liked the choice to make the orcs super pale because, like I was saying last time, if you don't have a lot of melanin in your skin, you're going to be more sensitive to sunlight, and that's a big thing with the orcs. So I like that choice. I understand that it's a little jarring based on the orcs that we're used to seeing in the Jackson films. But overall, for the sake of what this is, I kind of like that choice. I know it's something that gets a lot of hate from other people online, so that's one thing that I want to defend. And I'm going to bring this back here so I can actually see it again, like I did last time. Oh, and then I said an awful lot of light getting through that canopy in the tunnel here for people that don't like sunlight, though.
How do you? So, I agree with that note, but also on a creative standpoint, like, how do you show the light is behind this canopy without showing the light?
Yeah.
And still understanding what you're looking at. It's kind of I think it's a visual tricky thing, and we have to, like, I had the exact same thought whenever I was watching it, but at the same time, I'm like, I don't know how they could have done that.
Well, I have lots of notes on the canopy later,
okay.
But they kind of
like, don't give it a lot of time. Just understand it as a purpose.
they kind of influence another thing that I have an issue with.
Got it.
I don't have a lot about this opening scene with them in the pit. Do you have anything here?
No, I like that it's a nice reminder / establishing of the orc and the orc mythology in this world. They're sensitive to sun. It gets all the points across for everything that's going to be important later on. There's definitely a lot of imagery going forward as far as, like, evil cannot abide the light. Like, in the presence of light, evil is just pushed out. That's a thing in Tolkien. That's a thing that we see throughout this series, and it's true of the orcs too. That's cool. Just want to appreciate that for a second.
Yep, that's fair. Deus Ex Machina ship rescue. So Galadriel asks, or she doesn't ask, she questions the soup. And then Halbrand says it's not poisoned, if that's your concern. Like, why would it be poisoned? If they wanted them to be dead, they could have left them in the ocean or just killed them. So there's no reason to bring you on board, wait until you wake up, and then poison you.
I think he's poking fun at her, right? Like that was my read on it. He's just like, well, it's not poison if that's, because she immediately has a reaction to it. She's like, yes, that's exactly what I was afraid of. She's again being the irrational one, and he's having a laugh off of her. Yeah. Not for humans, anyways. He says immediately after, and he's just,
even though we know elves have a stronger constitution than humans do.
Yeah, he's just enjoying ribbing her.
Yeah, that I do get. Yeah. I have here, their armor restricts torso movement. It should be a little bit shorter or have lames around the waist or a placard, just so that you can turn your body in it. Like, my armor has, like, it stops at about my rib cage, then it has lames or, like, bands of armor so that it can still move and flex.
It's kind of a running theme, running criticism on this show. It's like the armor is
hard to move in.
Yeah, just not as well thought out as, like, a historical armor smith might have done. Yeah.
Now, again, in defense of this show, I saw a meme earlier showing Boromir in his, like, Gondor guard armor, and, like, these guys' older, more simple armor, And it was like, this is Numenor at the height of their power. Look how garbage their armor is. Versus Gondor at the like lowest point they've ever been in history. Look at how amazing their armor is. I'm like, yeah, but there's 3,000 years of armor development. So that is again a point where I'm gonna defend this show against a little bit of the hate backlash. It's like, yeah, armor's gonna get better over 3,000 years. Even the worst armor in
medieval
pick a year
times.
where they were using armor. Yeah. Like the worst armor in the 1300s is still better than the best armor from 1500 BC. Like it's not my armor rig back there is a 14th century Italian rig, and like it's pretty protective.
Nice.
So, but again, if you look at what the Egyptians or the Greeks were wearing 3,000 years before that, like, yeah, of course it doesn't.
Yeah, because that's there's a lot of callbacks to, this is, especially here with Numenor, we're calling back to the I'm forgetting the proper name here. The Byzantine Empire, is that it? No.
Maybe.
No. That's
Byzantines had lamellar armor and like the pointy helms.
Yeah,
Lamellar's the like layer or.
We're calling back to like the Iliad and stuff here. We're that's kind of like our reference, our visual and our stylistic archetype that we're looking at here, or motifs is what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
So they're on a boat. They're not doing hand-to-hand combat. Why not just give them a breastplate?
Yeah, it should still be a breastplate you can bend your waist in, but otherwise,
is it supposed to be leather, or is it supposed to be bronze, you think?
I honestly don't know. I think it's
kind of
supposed
hard
to be
to tell.
bronze, but I do think it's great that Galadriel never thanks them for rescuing her and pulling her out of the ocean.
Yeah. But she's a little on edge, let's say.
And then here, Halbrand says, "We're nearly where?" And he says home, and I'm like, well, you're home, yeah, but like where for everyone else? The rest of us don't know where home is.
Yeah, I get that from a logical standpoint. I think, but this is another example actually I wanted to call up again where it's this, and then somebody goes, what is that?
Yeah.
And then like it's kind of glazed over, and I don't like that as a dialogue flow.
Yeah.
Here's what I got from this when I was watching this, first and second time. What's his name? Elendil?
Yeah.
Elendil. When Elendil says, "You'll see soon enough," he knows Galadriel's an elf.
Yeah.
So she will remember Numenor. He knows this about her, and I think it's supposed to play like that. Sauron is playing coy. Where are we at?
Yeah.
Like, what is that? And so the home reply is supposed to be, it's kind of a waving a banner for everyone. Like Elendil's response there is supposed to be home. This is where both elves and humans are supposed to belong. It's my home, but also it's calling back to a place that we all used to belong. That's revealing his inner monologue, his inner workings. This is what he believes at his core, and we find out that is exactly what he believes.
Because Elendil doesn't just mean one who loves the stars, or something like that.
Yeah, he also loves puppies.
Yeah,
but
yes. I do say like great visuals here. I really like the way they've done Numenor. I like that it's basically mini Minas Tirith. Like, I know some people were like, oh, they just redid Minas. It's like, well, yeah, like if that's the architecture that you know and makes you think of home, of course you're going to recreate that in whatever world you end up in.
Well, I mean, I think actually, technically, Minas Tirith might have been made after Numenor?
Oh, yeah, I think definitely.
So, like, technically.
Yeah.
So, but the reason why they probably copied it is because, that's...
Yeah, that's exactly what I was
okay. Yeah.
And then I have the smithing is actually done right. Credit where it is due. They do, up until like the very last scene of the season, they do a great job with the smithing.
heavy weapon for. They don't just like pour swords into a cast and then let them dry and now we have a sword blade, because that would not function.
I loved the Smith review. So for those of you who don't know, I suspect most people who are watching this, people who are this into the lore, probably already know this, but Sauron is known as the Smith. He like his whole thing is smithing. And crafting. That's what he's good at. That's what he's attracted to. That's what he knows. That's what he's gifted at. Anyways, so like I love him coming in, and this is another way to it's a landmark to reconfirm. Those who know. It's like if you suspect this is Sauron, when you see him get all hearts in his eye emoji over smithing, if you were thinking that he might be Sauron, that's a good way for you to go like, oh yeah, it's Sauron. Okay, just making sure we weren't misled, we weren't misdirected. Remember, this guy who's here right now is Sauron, and he's come to infiltrate and corrupt this place.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, spoiler alert.
If you believe that he's here to corrupt the place, and you don't think he's just there to escape his old life and become a smith. Next thing I have is, it's awfully demanding of Galadriel to the queen. She just comes in and starts making demands of the queen after.
But what is it? Something triggers her, because he gives. So we see. She gets some advice from Hellbrand here.
Yeah.
And it seems like at first she might listen to it. If I'm not mistaken, I haven't watched this sequence in a while, but I think it's like, seems like she's going to listen to it for a second, and then she does the thing that she always does, where she's told to be patient. She goes, "No, I don't have time," and that's her trigger point. Every time someone says complacency, time, like even if that's not what they say, what she hears is just be complacent, or just give it a little bit more time. She says, "No, we don't have time," and that's what her trigger is. That's when she goes back into like battle mode, and she starts wrecking her relationships with everyone.
So speak elf, name yourself. Also, like, I know this is just trying to sound fantasy-y. Mm-hmm. But I hate the way they say Numenor, and they always roll the R's so hard at the end.
Yeah.
Numenor.
I'm not a huge fan of it either, but
yeah. It's not the worst thing in the world, but it is a little. Again, it just feels like you're trying too hard, and it takes me out of it. I kind of wish he didn't say of the Southlands. I kind of wish after she left her big long introduction, he just Halbrand and ended it there.
I agree. I forget if it has any purpose or weight to it that he says that, but
from the Southlands.
Yeah.
So here she says, "Your captain delivered us from certain death." So we get a confession that was a suicide attempt at the end of episode 1.
I think that's her trying to be amiable. She's trying to be grateful.
Mm-hmm. So we ask that Numenor continue his mercy.
Yeah.
Well, if they were gonna, here, and grant us ship's passage to Middle Earth. First thing she does is start making requests.
Yeah, I mean, that's just her stating her intent. She's not going to be patient here.
But then because of elves, you had this land, so it's
yeah.
So again, it just seems very and yeah, you're right. As soon as someone says, "You need to take a second," she's like, "No, this is what I'm entitled. Give me it. Give me it."
No. I think that's absolutely why we have so many reactions from other people. This is the thing that we get over and over again with Galadriel. She knows the mission in her head. She knows she's right. This is another thing that we haven't talked about yet. There is in the books, if it is meant to be in the show, I don't think it's well expressed. But Galadriel as a character in the books, in the canon, has a little gift for
reading people's minds.
No, portent. Like she can actually
Mm-hmm.
see the future.
Yeah.
And she can read the waves of fate a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So some of this is like she is hell-bent on finding Sauron. Some of it is like she's just more in tune with the threads of fate. Like she knows stuff's about to go down. Her whole life she's had to try to justify her actions to people. Which again gets to your point that you always say is like, yeah, you should have to have evidence. You should have to. Yeah, you're right. But like, she's an exhausted old war veteran that's grumpy and on a mission. She's trying to save some people. Why won't you just let me save you? Is kind of her feeling. Everyone else has the exact opposite reaction to her. Where she seems like an entitled elf to them. This is the problem. This is our problem, dude. Like, they view her as entitled. What she's asking for a ride home. I gotta be honest. Like, when I first watched it, when I second time watched it, I was like, I mean, that's not too much to ask. Like,
Well, she was planning on swimming there anyway. Why does she need a boat?
No, but I mean, like, if she just says, "Hey, I need a lift home," like that's essentially what she's saying. They're like, we don't do trade with over there anymore. So this is gonna be a lot of paperwork. She go and her mind, she's like, I'm trying to save people here. Like, the countryside's on fire and I have the only bucket of water.
Yeah.
Like, screw your bureaucracy. Let me take your car.
Like, one bucket of water isn't going to put out the entire
okay. But you know what I mean? Like the stakes. They're like, I don't know. This seems like an awful big ask. We need paperwork, and she's just like, mother effers. Yeah. I'm trying to save the world here. Like the scope of their concerns is so wildly different.
So again, I'm coming back to, if she's 1,000 years old and she's been using these exact tactics to get her way for centuries and isn't getting her way with the tactics she's using, she needs to learn how to communicate better.
Yeah, like, I mean, I agree.
At some point, it's Einstein's definition of insanity. If you keep doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results, you're insane. And she keeps doing the same thing over and over, expecting to get her way when she never gets her way.
Well, I mean, like when she does ask nicely, which we'll see later on. I think it's in the next episode or something.
Yeah, she's already ruined her relationship by the time she gets around to asking nicely. If you ask nicely the first time.
Yeah, I was gonna say if she asked nicely the first time, sure. But I agree with you, but it's also just a character trait. Like, we wouldn't have interesting character. Again, maybe some people would argue she's not interesting because she is the way that she is. But I saw this and I was like, I get it, and I guess that's my whole opinion. Is like I get her as a character, and I don't think she can't change that wildly. She's too straightforward. She's too honest. She's too direct. Like, that's her whole thing.
I think I have the same issues with Galadriel in this that I had with Ragnar in the Vikings TV series.
Ooh, okay.
Is there were so many times where it's like everything he did would just enrage the entire Viking community, and every episode they'd be like, we're gonna kill him, and then he'd be like, but I am the main character, and they'd be like, all right, we forgot, I guess we'll make you king now. And he kept getting promoted and getting his way in spite of his actions, not because of his actions.
Interesting.
And I don't like that.
Interesting, yeah.
Versus then in like The Last Kingdom, it was almost the exact opposite, where it's like Uhtred did everything right and everything that was asked and expected of him, and just got punished at every turn. So like, again, I don't like that either. It's like you should. There needs to be a balance.
Yeah.
And then here, Halbrand's like, well, what if we stayed? Like, you don't have a choice. Like, you have to stay. Perhaps it'd be better if we stayed. It's like, yeah, that's what's going to happen. That's the only option you've been given is stay.
I mean, he's a charmer here, right? Like, he's just saying, Oh no, maybe you're right. Like he's just calming the waters.
He's like, what if we stayed long enough to give you adequate time to like reconsider? It's like, why would they reconsider? They gain nothing from helping you. You have nothing to offer them. There's no reason for them to reconsider.
Yeah. No, I mean, but also to Halbrand's point, like, or Sauron's point, like he doesn't necessarily want to move on. Necessarily, so like. He's not in a hurry to make it to the Southlands as much as Galadriel is. Mm-hmm. He does want to make it there, but he's not in as much of a hurry as Galadriel. So he's cool with just calming the waters and being like. He's also reading the room. We get a lot of him reacting as he looks around. Mm-hmm. I think that's just supposed. There's the two readings here again, where it's like. Reading him as Halbrand, the witty swashbuckler, charming little, like, we're supposed to take him as a human. The first time we watched this show, we're supposed to take that he's just, this disenfranchised, charming, witty guy, just a human. And so you're supposed to be like, okay, he's just reading the room and he's trying to come up with a solution. But if you read him as being Sauron and you rewatch it, then you go like, oh, he's just figuring these people out, same as Galadriel. Like, he's just figuring out what their buttons are, and he's gonna push them.
But again, I think he needs to offer something. He doesn't offer anything. He's like, well, what if we just give you, what if we stay, since you've said you're gonna make us stay, and give you time to reconsider, even though there's no reason you should reconsider. Why? It needs to be like, hey, I have something to offer you to benefit you in order for you to reconsider. So I'm gonna offer you this, but he doesn't offer anything. It's just, he literally just reiterates what they're already going to do and asks them to change their mind without reason for them to change their mind.
There is one little thing that I will say about what he says at the end there. He says, you and your advisors to reconsider, and he's clearly talking to the counselor here.
Yeah.
Farazan. Oh my gosh. Thank you, X-Ray. I've been trying to remember his name for so long.
I knew it started with a P, but that was all I had.
Yeah.
But like Proximo? No, that's the guy from Gladiator.
No, he's trying to, and I don't know if the evidence is there, but I imagine, like, thinking about like what this scene ought to be. He ought to rightfully identify that Farazan is the player. Mm-hmm. He's the guy who controls the people, and maybe if we rewatch it again, we can even see whether or not that's actually supported. But if he was a super sharp, keen-eyed, let's see here. I think.
Yeah, I don't get anything that shows like Halbrand reading Farazan. We get a lot of just like darting around to everyone's reactions around the rooms.
Yeah. So he's talking a little bit to Farazan there. Maybe I'm looking for it too hard in the sequence, but that's what this scene ought to have been. This scene ought to have been Sauron picking out Farazan as the puppet he needs to control. Whether or not they have any kind of agreement or understanding of who each other is, he should be like, Farazan's my guy.
Yeah.
Let's give him just a little pat on the back so that he will come and support my idea.
So along your lines of Elrond, when Celebrimbor says he needs the forge done by spring, or like even if we just got like an eye twitch out of Elrond, that would have helped conclude or sell the scene.
Yeah.
So again, here it's like if when the queen makes her ruling, Farazan like starts to say something, but the queen cuts her off, and then we get just a little reaction out of Halbrand. Then maybe, but we don't have anything like that.
Yeah.
And then here Farazan says 3 days, and the elf is to be restricted to palace ground. And Galadriel says, I won't be a prisoner. But when they were walking through the streets earlier, they said, like, it's dangerous to be in the streets without an escort. It's like, maybe they're not imprisoning you. Maybe it's just a safety concern.
Yeah.
So like, stop jumping to conclusions.
Oh yeah, no, that's just Galadriel being Galadriel.
Yeah, like, but I don't like Galadriel. That's part of the issue I have with her. Is she just everything is what I need right now, and no concern or even awareness of what she's been told before. Because again, she's told before like it's not safe to be out here without an escort. So when they say like you have to stay in the palace, it's like, well, maybe it's for your safety, not an issue of like we're concerned you're gonna try something. Maybe we're concerned about what the people here who hate elves are gonna try to do to you.
Sure. I mean, there's also multiple intent. Like, I don't think it's wrong for her to assume ulterior motives. Because she's definitely a prisoner.
Yeah.
She's not wrong in identifying that they are locking her up in the most comfortable cell.
Yeah, gilded cage.
Yeah, like she rightfully identifies that that's what's going on. In my opinion,
Yeah.
she's like, no, I don't want to be a prisoner. Like, I will not be a prisoner. You know.
But again, calling them out on it does nothing to endear her to them. Does
Sure.
nothing to get them on her side.
Sure.
I do like the dagger here, that because it endears Halbrand to her.
Yep.
So this plays to your 40 chess.
Yep.
For me, I think it's just him trying to get her to stop being so mean to everyone so that he can live a peaceful life. So my next note is the sea is always right. I hate it. So I was like, I'm like, how do you? Oh no, stop! What did you do?
Did you erase all your notes?
Yeah. No, I just
Okay.
jumped ahead a little bit. Just folded this up. I think you had notes about the voice
Yeah.
calling out to him. So go ahead and
So-
do those while I figure out where I am.
I think this is really cool. This is a nice way to show Isildur. He's got his heads in the cloud. He's kind of proud. He's looking out on the horizon. And he hears whispers. That's important. That's an important theme for the show. It's an important theme for this character because it happens several times with him, where he hears. I think it's supposed to be he's here, in the. It's kind of hard to pick out in the audio. I don't know if it's ever revealed for sure what the whispers are trying to say. If it's his brother, if it's his father, if it's Sauron.
Yeah.
I kind of, my own head canon / reading of this is that it is Sauron, but essentially like we hear from all the banter between his comrades that his head's been in the clouds all day. That's because he's been distracted by the whispers.
Yeah.
That's another thing we have to keep in mind when watching a lot of these episodes, is that the presence of Sauron is corrupting, and it's just kind of like holding the ring. Like, you just start to think things that you wouldn't normally think are right. So, and I think that pops up. I think it pops up honestly for Galadriel whenever she's around Halbrand. I think it pops up in other characters whenever they're around a corrupting force. It's like there's just this whisper. There's this tug on the psyche to try to influence you and tempt you into something that's not good. That's again a very Catholic ideology from Tolkien, present in the books, present in the show. I love to see it, and I just want to like put a finger on it and say like it is here, so we should respect it as part of their storytelling. Because I think a lot of people will kind of go like, why is this person acting bad all of a sudden? Well, it's because they're really close to the hilt, per se, or whatever. So we have to respect that they have consciously been trying to add it in there, that there's a corrupting force that like almost audibly whispers to people and it tugs at their soul.
Yeah.
There's also God, I can't remember what the eyes, where I saw that. Sees all roads right. I'm trying to remember why the eyes. It's important.
Maybe it's in the next
Yeah.
bit. So yeah, I hate the sea is always right. One, I'm like, how do you interpret the sea's will? I think that it's too loose, it has no real meaning, it sounds poetic, but can in no way be enforced, and seems to be kind of a foundation of a lot of decisions, if not law, in Numenor. So that's one of those things where, again, it's like, it sounds really, it sounds very winter is coming, but it doesn't have any actual meaning to follow.
I mean, I almost find it like easy to dismiss for that reason. Like I when I look at where it's placed throughout the episode and even like later on, it's always almost kind of bad. It's like bad advice, really.
Yeah.
Like they're saying like the sea is always right to justify something bad happening.
Yeah.
And so like I don't.
It's like, well, I'm a Scorpio, so I just did this. You know?
100%. So I kind of take it. Since that's how it's presented in the show, that's how I always took it too.
Yeah.
It was like they're supposed to be withheld. They're restricted and withheld, and they make bad decisions because of this thing they won't let go of.
Yeah. If it was, there's a specific line I'm looking for, so I'm gonna pause while I look away for a second. If it was something to the effect of like, the sea is always right. So it's like when you're out on the water, you go with what the sea is doing. You learn how to move your boat through giant waves because you can't fight giant waves. You learn how to use the wind because you can't change the wind. So the sea itself is always right. You do what the sea dictates that you do in order to move your ship and survive. If it was used in that context and only used in that context, I would think it's phenomenal. But because of coming up right here, Elendil says like, well, I found Galadriel in the sea, and the sea's always right. The sea brought her to me, so clearly I was meant to rescue her. And then again, that's where I come down on the whole, like, it has too kind of elusive interpretation. Sure. It's like, well, maybe the fact that she was stranded on sea meant she belongs to the sea, and she was supposed to die out there. So why did you take it upon yourself to defy the sea and bring her up to safety? So again, that's where it starts to lose me. Again, if it was just about sailing and it was like, look, you can't fight the sea is always right, I would think it's great. But because it's not strictly confined to that context, that's where it loses me.
That would be a really cool way to use it.
Yeah.
I think I remember where I wanted to use this actually. So with the queen, this is another reoccurring thing that we see across multiple characters. Eyes being open. I think everyone mentioned this online. Everyone got it, that the eyes and wisdom. Your eyes need to be open to perceive what's actually going on, but also as a sense of like what's to come. And I don't think that's an accident. I think this is also, again, getting back to some of the great epics, some of the great plays that like specifically the point of Oedipus and like self-fulfilling prophecies and whatnot, where especially around the queen, she's, spoilers, give everyone 3 seconds. By the end of this season, she loses her sight. So, but in so much of her character leading up to that, she is dominated by trying to keep her eyes open and out to the horizon because she thinks this disaster is on the way. And so that's kind of like she has this prophecy that she's trying to avoid so bad that she ends up kind of causing it at the end. But it doesn't happen as literal as she sees it. It happens, metaphorically. So I think that's really cool that they established that kind of like motif throughout of every time I see it is like whenever the eyes come open, they're seeing some piece of fate coming towards them, and it's impactful.
I just see it as people generally have their eyes open.
You know what? Good point.
So right here he says the sea put. Did you have more on the eyes? Sorry, before.
No, I might amend that later because there was a specific point that it came up, but I can't remember what it was. I know it's important for later on, so I wanted to set up for it.
So here, Elendil says that like the sea put the elf in his path, and the sea is always right. So here's my like evidence, and then she says the sea cannot commit treason. So again, I'm like, how do you interpret what the sea's will is? He says the sea brought her to me, and the sea is always right. And then she's like, but by bringing her here, you've committed treason. So if the sea is always right, again, it conflicts. Mm-hmm. It conflicts a lot.
Yeah.
So somewhere in here, I have a note. There's a line that says it's unwise to live guessing. I couldn't find it in the actual thing. Maybe I'll look for it later. It says it's unwise to live guessing, and I say, unless you're guessing which way the sea is always right.
I think this is supposed to be a comparison of leadership styles. Mm-hmm. He's leading with a proverb: "The seed is always right." Mm-hmm. He's supposed to present, because like later on we find out that he's kind of he's maybe not doing what the law requires him to do. He literally takes Galadriel where he's not supposed to. But he's doing what is air quotes right. So he's the chaotic good character, which is funny because like he is trying to get his son to follow the laws and take some sort of order into his life. Mm-hmm. But like, and she represents the kind of like, no, I have a whole kingdom to maintain, and like, so I have to do things that are maybe not right in the immediate sense, but like I have to maintain order there, boy. So like, you're gonna solve this for me. Yeah. So I think that's how she flips the proverb. Mm-hmm. The colloquialism on him is really cool. That's what I take away from the shot. But you know, I think the sea is always right in itself as its own. Is it always kind of like, if this is supposed to be like a wise piece of advice that the Numenorians use all the time, it's sure used for like justifying
pretty much everything.
Yeah. So I'll give you that one. But I like the scene still.
Yeah. So here I have like, they're sizzling when the orcs are in the sun now. Are the orcs vampires now? Mm-hmm. So again, it's like, external lore, it's always like they just don't like the sunlight. They can survive in it. This is like, no, they like literally will burn up in it sometimes. They're not super consistent about that. Mm-hmm. Sorry, go ahead.
I do wonder to that point, like,
and even when there's like just a little bit of cloud cover, like they're fine. It doesn't have to be like, they don't need a lot of protection from the sun. It's just a little bit of cloud cover, and then he's okay. Yeah. But sorry, go ahead.
I say like I do think that this is one of those things that like they probably amped it up in post, like when they were adding effects and sound effects and stuff. They probably added that sizzle. They probably added the burn to his skin and stuff all after all the shooting was done. So it's probably written in the script fairly consistently, at least more consistently than what we see here, because in the post they just had to like, when they were looking for ways to drive the point home of each scene, and they weren't necessarily watching them all back to back, they probably did get inconsistent when they're just like, God, I don't feel like we're getting how much pain this orc is in, so can we add like a little sizzle effect? Can we get a little frying bacon in there?
So again though, like, you have the option of just not doing that. You could do the orcs the way we've always known orcs, and it's like they just don't like sunlight. Not that it will literally kill them if they go out in it. So now I have, the orcs can't live in sunlight, so why are they now digging a tunnel, or why are they now digging a trench instead of continuing to dig the tunnel that they'd been digging before? Because the tunnel would block all of the sunlight. Where are they getting all of these tarps to cover the trench that they're in? Because later we see them zoom out, and it's miles, if not leagues long, this trench. Yeah. So where are they getting all of these tarps to cover from? I doubt that one little village they raided had enough blankets to cover this entire trench. One of the elves says that they're searching for something, which I think is an error on the elves' observation point, and maybe that's a thing for his character. I don't know. But it's like when you're searching for something, you kind of dig holes in areas until you find something promising, and then you dig out from that point in like archaeology. You don't just like dig a wandering path. So we know that this trench is not searching for something. We know that this trench is meant to guide a water flood, but he doesn't know that. But again, he should be able to look at the way this trench is being dug and know that they're not looking for something.
But I think I always took that as like just because they are searching for something. They're searching for the key to the what is it called? Or is it Oris Tirith or whatever the tower is called?
Yeah, Ostirith.
Ostirith, yeah. But so I think like they are searching for something. So this must have my intuition was always like, oh, they overheard the orcs talking, and they know that they're searching for something. So yeah. I agree with you. I think the elves are falsely identifying that the digging and the searching are separate.
Yeah.
But I think this is also kind of like just to show that they're sharing what knowledge they're learning.
Yeah.
You know.
So they're searching for something. Yeah. Go ahead.
This is some sort of weapon, perhaps.
Yeah, which I have a note about. Like, why do you jump to the conclusion that it's a weapon? Yeah. Like, again, this just seems like you have knowledge that you shouldn't have.
Yeah, they do try to play up that they're being observant while they're being a prisoner. Mm-hmm. So maybe I'm doing too much legwork for the writers here, but I filled in the blank that I was just kind of like, okay, they're looking around, they're overhearing conversations, but they're trying to stitch together.
Arendir just got here. So, what's his friend's name? Medor?
Yeah. So,
Medor says they're searching for something. Arondir says some kind of weapon, perhaps. Mm-hmm. And then Medor says, like, I don't know. Yeah. So it's like, why, Arondir, why do you assume they're looking for a weapon? Because later we do find out it is kind of a weapon, kind of a key, but, like, it's like, why is that the conclusion you come to, that they're searching for a weapon? Let's see. Oh, and then I have, is Adar Sauron?
I mean, yes, we're supposed to believe that for most of the season, right?
Yeah. Let's see. World building, fantasy, colloquialism, like salt from a table, again, feels kind of forced. He's talking about like wiping. I think wiping the orcs out or something. He says, he's like, we're gonna go get elves. We'll come back and then we'll wipe them out like salt from a table.
Yeah. And
again, it's like I get what you're saying, but again, I feel like there is a better way to say that. Like salt from a table, and then the trees.
I would be curious. It has been a while since I have read, actually read The Lord of the Rings, or Silmarillion, and I would be curious to see if any of this verbiage is like in the books, because Tolkien was never really, for all of his for all of his attention to the great epics and stuff, like he was a little bit of a point blank person. So like a lot of his metaphors, a lot of his descriptions of places were kind of straightforward. They were meant to be laced with information, but they're a little bit straightforward. So salt from a table feels like something that I might have read in one of his books, just because it's so straightforward, like just kind of visually it articulates exactly what it does, and it's like, okay, salt from a table. But
maybe, but again, like you have the Bilbo, I feel like butter scraped over too much bread. That one I think is great because again, it like perfectly illustrates exactly the point that he's making.
Yeah.
Without.
So I just would be curious to go back and read and see what colloquialisms, because it's not fresh in my mind, what colloquialisms did Tolkien use specifically, and whether or not they were actively trying to pull from that, or if this is just stuff they made up in the writer's room.
Well, my Saturday's pretty open, so maybe I'll read the I'll read the Silmarillion on
No,
Saturday.
you won't. If you make, I will give you $5. That's all. I will give you $5 if you make it through the entire Silmarillion on Saturday.
On Saturday, I'm a slow reader. I don't think I could. Like even if it wasn't super dense, I don't think I could do it. Just that much volume. So then here I have a lot of notes about like, okay, so they tell them to rip the tree down, or the tree's in the way. They say rip it down. He says that'll slow us down. Let's go around. They're like, no. I'm like, you clearly don't have to have a direct path here. You easily could go around the tree.
Mm-hmm.
If it's gonna make that much of a difference, like you don't need to go.
It's the principle.
Yeah, but again, that sets up so many other things where it's like, now this orc is basically just standing in the sunlight. They've got hoods and stuff on. Where are they getting all this alligator skin from is also what I want to know.
Hard to say.
But again, like, now they're basically just like standing in the sunlight. It doesn't seem to be bothering
I was gonna say, like, they did early when in the opening sequence when he's being dragged, we did overhear an argument. It's like, oh, it's your turn in the sun. So like apparently this is a thing. Like you get shifts in the sun and it sucks, and everyone wants to get out of the sun as soon as they can. So yeah, they're in sun duty right now. I think they set it up okay, but yeah, later on I think it's more of a problem because like I buy the orc sensitivity as far as this episode is concerned, but then later on when they're like just feverishly
you can see his forearm just like in the sunlight right there, and nothing's happening with it. Arendir's gonna cut down the tree. This is a horrible axe design. Like the point where you're gonna put the most pressure on the axe is the point where you have the least material support for the axe. Just bad axe design. So now here we see there are hectares of trees that have been cut down, ripped out of the ground, chopped up, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So, like, if you don't like sunlight, why are you destroying all of the shade? Why are you cutting all these trees down in the first place? Why does the elf refuse to cut down this tree when he clearly didn't raise a hand against the destruction of thousands more? His wood chopping form is bad, but that's a complaint I have of almost every actor doing manual labor.
Wow. Shots fired.
Yeah. So again, like, they show miles
Go back
of trench.
to drinking lattes, actors.
Yeah. So again, they show miles of trench. Why not a tunnel? Where's the canopy coming from? Why are you cutting down all of these trees if you don't like sunlight? Like, there are so many things. And the reason that they do it will come to later, but it's so that Arondir can fly through the air and hit a pole and knock down a small portion of canopy. But it's like you have to take so many steps that don't make sense in order to set up that one moment.
I mean, so the scene is meant to build tension and express just how stubbornly different these factions are, right? Mm-hmm. Like orcs. What the elf suggests is perfectly reasonable. They're like, just go around it. Now, probably if we wanted to get really nitpicky about it, it's like, well, we can't put a bend in the channel because it's going to be having thousands of gallons of water rushing through it. So to put a bend in it would cause problems. So it has to keep going straight.
I mean, you just have to.
If you want to get really, if you really wanted to get really nitpicky about it, but what it really comes down to is, orcs despise life. Elves like life. They especially like their forests.
No, again,
yeah,
I'm 100% on board with all of they're making tension, these things. But again, like, if you hate sunlight, why are you taking away all of the shade? I would get it if it was like, hey, this tree is in the way and we can't have a bend in our trench. Cut down this tree. But the fact that they've taken down every single other tree is a problem.
It doesn't look like healthy land anyways. Like, none of the trees that they really show there look super healthy. There's that one tree that they just came to that had some leaves on it.
Well, the trees were probably fine until they cut them down and burned them up.
Maybe.
Like,
but there's also that bit that they put in there from the other episode think it was the last episode or the first episode that they're saying like the land is starting to show like the grass is starting to get blighted because of just the presence of evil. So I would wager to bet I would bet that this is also just like them trying to display like the presence of orcs. They cut down the forest everywhere they go, just because they resent life so much, and that they have like this corrupting influence on the land that just kills the stuff there. So I think that's what they're trying to depict.
But again, like, dead trees will still stand for quite a while.
Yeah.
Like, so even if it is the corrupting influence, and again, like, I understand orcs hate life, so they want to damage everything. But in the process of damaging those trees, they're also making it harder for themselves to survive if they burn up in sunlight like vampires. So it's like, even if you hate trees, if the trees are literally saving your life, you're not going to cut down all the trees.
Okay. I mean, that's a fair point, because even later on we see a forest where the orcs are able to run through and chase them down. So I think it's a fair, rational stance to take. We're not talking about rational entities here. We're talking about principled entities. We're talking about presenting worldviews. So I buy that for $1. I'm willing to let it slide, I guess, for the sake of understanding who we're dealing with.
Yeah. So I just think there are too many points and too many examples to just overlook all of them. If it happened once in a while, I could be fine with it. But because it happens so consistently and so frequently. Back in Numenor, these guards are garbage. Galadriel is so ungrateful. Maybe if you'd shown a little gratitude and humility, the queen would have been willing to listen. When she's trying to steal a boat. Also, Galadriel's a murder hobo. She comes up and just like holds a knife to Elendil for no reason. He's posed no threat to her. He's made zero.
No, he did pose a
aggressive
threat. He did
movements.
pose a threat. He's trying to stop her from getting her objective.
Yeah, but he hasn't actually like made any moves toward her.
Huh.
He hasn't attempted to restrain her. He's just having a conversation, and she pulls a knife on him.
Yeah.
Galadriel is
She's trying to
evil.
intimidate. Yeah. No, you're right. She's absolutely tunnel vision in the worst sort of way right now.
And then here, Galadriel's a racist. Who is this mortal who speaks to me as if he has the slightest idea who I am? It's like, just why you gotta hate on him just because he's a human?
They hated on her because she's an elf.
Yeah, but he didn't hate on her for being an elf.
Fair point. Which is exactly the point of the scene whenever we get there.
I do like this line about the daughter who runs fast and the son who runs blind, and she looks like both.
Yeah.
I do like that. I think that's good. Because it makes sense.
Yeah. And also, it's absolutely true. It's a nice grounding moment to just be like, hey, listen, you are acting unwise. You're acting hastily. I'm your ally. I'm here to help you out.
Even though you're 950 years older than me, I'm wiser than you.
Yo, but he's a father of two. So listen.
Fair. Fair. I have in my notes here, Elendil, so wise, so chill.
Yeah, he's changed so many diapers, man. This guy's not fazed by anything. Galadriel, I don't think has had a baby yet.
No. I still think by the time you're 1,000 years old, you should have grown up a little bit, but...
So, I love this moment. I like seeing her enjoying a ride. People give it a lot of guff. This is where I have to come out and again just call out the haters who give it a lot of guff, because they're like, we're supposed to believe that she's a good and well-rounded character because of this one scene. Listen, man, the number of times I've watched an action flick where they ride a boat and they're having a good time, cracking open bales and laughing and going, oh, yeah, we're friends. And that's supposed to sell the entire friendship. Don't even get me started. So let's just give the horse girl and accept what we're being shown. She is capable of feeling joy. She likes riding horses. Okay, cool. Now we know that.
Yeah.
And we know that she's a little bit more. Or you can sit there and cross your arms and go like, no, I still want to be grumpy at her. No. She's where they have a limited number of screen time. I wish they had more.
But again, I think that if there were, I think there are plenty of other opportunities to make her an endearing character that they don't take.
She's been under so much pressure every minute from the beginning of this series up until this point in episode 3. She has constantly been under pressure. Everything has been go, go, go. It's been channeling it towards it. This is a release point for her where we finally get to see the Galadriel that is whenever she's free of pressure. And so we see her free of pressure is a person capable of smiling, capable of feeling free, of feeling hope. She's still in there. It's the last time we got to see that was back whenever someone said, Commander, wait, Galadriel, stop. And she went, oh, God, like, I think that's just one of those things is like, this is just another like checkpoint in her journey where we go like, she's still in there. We've seen her go down and go down and go down, and someone has pulled her back up yet again. She's not been so isolated. She's been like somebody has reached out the hand to pull her back up, and we can see her underneath the badness. So we see the bad in her. We also see that she is still in there somewhere, and then we're gonna watch her descend several times more. But
I have, why is everyone in Numenor so threatened by one person? The queen thinks one elf is a threat to the entire society, which I get the queen's having visions, but again, nobody else knows that, and we don't know that. The guys at the bar think Halbrand is going to take everything on the island. Again, I think the smithing is well done. Let's get to the scene where he's at the bar, unless you have any scenes.
He just says, I know this is going back over a former point, but like he does mention that there's no other man on this isle that knows the craft better than I, and he's not lying.
Yeah.
Like,
I do think it's a little when they're like, oh, you can't work steel until you have your smith's badge.
Yeah.
It's like, well, how do you earn your smith's badge? Don't you have to like work steel to learn how to work steel to earn your smith's badge? And also he doesn't tell, and this is a thing too where it's like, I can get a little bit on board with Halbrand being the bad guy.
Sure.
Because he doesn't ask, how do I get a smith's badge? He just resorts to stealing one.
Yeah.
Granted, he steals it off of a mean person, so like that's fine, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
You can steal from people as long as they're mean.
I love the recalling the motif of like, oh, I have a lot of names.
Yeah.
It depends on how close you are to me. I love that.
Mm-hmm.
I do love the pushing on him where we see him like, having the wartime flashbacks of like, do I just want to murder this entire tavern right now? Because once you know he's Sauron, you're just like, oh yeah.
Yeah.
But then you also kind of like come to the realization he's like, no, he's exactly where he wants to be. He's gonna work all of these dudes. He's also gonna steal this guy's badge, but he's also gonna work all the people of Numenor to get them on his side.
I think he just wants the peaceful life.
What?
I mean, he just wants the peaceful life. I should say louder because I don't think the mic picked me up.
Yeah, go ahead. You want to say it?
No.
This one?
Go ahead.
I think there's nothing to refute that yet. I can't wait to see what they do with it. I really hope that they're doing 4D chess Sauron. That's what I see.
That's what they're gonna say they were doing. I don't think that's what they were doing.
We'll see.
And then this guy, like, you come here, you take our food, our drinks. What are you gonna take next? Our lands, our trade.
We get your woman.
Yeah. So it's like, why is this guy think that one person is literally gonna come here and take everything?
I mean, like, this is again calling back to the Harfoots. This whole thing that keeps popping up of like the insular cultures, the cultures that are just kind of like making you hateful of other people and suspicious. There's something I said in the episode 1 breakdown, and I should probably re-articulate it. Maybe we'll go back and I can re-record it. But one of the things that like is in Tolkien a lot, and is definitely clear in this show a lot, is how isolation is bad, but also importantly, on the same line there is like lack of trust. Mistrust is really like mistrust and isolation kind of go hand in hand. They're the same theme, but mistrust leads to evil, and being agreeable, being a somebody who can be an active part of society and the world is the better way to go, obviously. So the Numenorians are shut off, mistrusting. That's a depiction of how they will be corrupted and turned evil.
Yeah, but again, it's one of those things where it's like I think they're shut off and mistrusting without enough supporting evidence. Like he's one person.
Yeah,
if he'd showed up with a fleet of ships and was like, "Hey, we're just innocent people that want to come here and hang out and learn how to smith and cook and farm," then it'd be like, okay, you just brought like 1,000 people here.
But that's not how, like, in the real world, and that's not the kind of corruption we're talking about here. We're talking about just essentially kind of bigotry and kind of bullying and peer pressuring and cultural built up negativity. Like, no, you're correct to think that they're irrational because they're not.
Yeah.
They don't have it all pieced together. They just hate them because that's what they are taught to do.
Yeah. So again, I think my biggest complaint with this, as we're delving into it, is just everyone is irrational, and I don't like that. I do like this bit in the alley I have here. Is Halbrand Sauron?
Oh, you got that note too, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the single scene that sells it in that whole thing is the breaking of the arm, isn't it? Like everything else, you're kind of like, oh, maybe he's just a good fighter. No, when you see him like put the guy's arm to the edge and just like almost enjoy snapping his arm, you're like, oh, you're not just like a good fighter. You're like,
you're a little sadistic.
Yeah.
It's the exact opposite of what we get with Galadriel. Galadriel, it's like every scene we can't stand her, and then we see her smile on a horse, and it's supposed to be like, oh, the real you, the good you is still in there. This it's like everything we see out of Halbrand is great, and then he like snaps that guy's arm. We're like, oh, maybe there is a dark person in there.
But it's funny because that's also true. That's we find out at the end of the story. Also true.
Yeah.
Your suspicions were correct.
I did that in my first book. The main character is a 2,500-year-old werewolf who spent the first few centuries of his life terrorizing the world effectively. And then again, he reforms, becomes a good guy, and he's a good guy during the phase of life that we see him in. But there are still times where it's like someone does something or says something and he goes just a little bit further than what he needs to. And it's like he's come a long way, but he will still wreck if things go too far.
Yeah. Still lives inside of him.
So here my next note is no one thought to check this library in the last 1,000 years when Sauron first left the mark on Galadriel's brother, and nobody was like, let's go here and see if it has any special meaning.
I mean, they hadn't talked to the Numenorians. To be fair, the Numenorians were literally a shut-off state.
I thought the Numenorians helped them in the war with Morgoth, and then when they thought it was over, they came back here.
Yes, that's correct.
They came here.
That's correct.
Yeah.
So, and the sign is the sign of Sauron. That's essentially his calling card saying, listen, if Morgoth dies, meet me here in 900 years.
Yeah.
So, the war was over, Numenor went back to being Numenor, and they haven't really been on the best of terms. So they haven't checked this library yet.
I still feel like if there's a potential existential threat to the world, you could send an emissary and just be like, hey, look, we know you guys want to be left alone. we just need to know if this mark shows up in your library anywhere, and then we'll be on our way.
Yeah. That might have happened off screen, and whether or not that scout came back alive is a huge factor. I based off of everything we're seeing here, I bet you he got as far as the dock or the pier, and they said, "You need to go home, elf boy."
Well, but they said that Numenor was friendly to elves until just recently, because even the queen's father is friendly to elves. It was just when he got sick and she took over power.
No, it's actually before that. Numenor has not been friendly to them for a while, and he was essentially kicked out of office because he also loved because he clung to the old ways, because he loved elves. He was shunned as a leader. We'll see that later on in the later episodes, but yeah, the hate for elves has been around at least longer than any human we see on screen their lives.
Well, then since the elves in this are also like OP, just send a sneaky SEAL Team 6 group of them to sneak into the library and look for them.
I also don't think Galadriel has pulled enough weight or convinced enough people
Yeah.
in general to have Celebrimbor be like, is it Celebrimbor? Who am I thinking of?
Gilgalad.
Gilgalad, thank you. For Gilgalad to be like, yeah, I need to infiltrate this other state for your witch hunt.
But again, I feel like if it had happened immediately,
Sure.
if it was like, hey, Morgoth just died, my brother was just killed by Sauron, this mark was left on my brother, it's probably important. If it happened right away, like
Maybe.
at that moment, then it should have been like, oh yeah, you're right, this probably is important. Maybe we should go look into that. What was I gonna say? Oh, I was gonna say, I said like, if it happened immediately, you should go search for it. My college rugby coach used to tell us there are rules in rugby about like, if you get tackled, you have to release the ball immediately. And he would always say, immediately. It's a long word. Take your time. So maybe Gilgalad had Gavin as his rugby coach. It was like, yeah, we should do this immediately in like 1,000 years.
I mean, that would be on point with everything we're presented with the elves.
Yeah.
But I'll get to it in 50 years.
Yeah. Here the nobody goes off trail and nobody walks alone chant, I think. Just this is an example of it takes up too much screen time. We talk a lot about economy of screen time. Like, you could have cut 3 verses off of this and saved a ton of screen time and allocated it towards something else. Chant scene takes too long. While they're chanting this outside, we learn that the Brandyfoots will be left behind if he can't pull the cart. So people do walk alone, and we will abandon you at the slightest inconvenience. Nobody goes off trail, nobody walks alone, nobody goes off trail, nobody walks alone. Like, that should have been enough. Here's 3. Here's 4.
So, I think I figured out a nice way to...
Here's 5.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
I think I figured out a nice way to condense the point or the takeaway that I always had with that mantra.
Yeah.
Essentially is like, we're a police state. If you see something, say something. I think that's essentially, that's the undercurrent of what it's at least used for from the Harfoot officials. They're saying essentially, keep an eye on your neighbors and do things the same way that you're supposed to.
Yeah. And again, similar to the "C is always right" thing. It's like, if that's how it was only ever used, I could buy that.
Yeah.
But they definitely use it in other scenes to mean like, no, we stick together and we travel together and we don't leave people alone.
Yeah.
So again,
I think this could be a really cool talking point. And I don't know how much time we want to spend talking about it right now during this episode, but it is a cool. It's cool that it comes up several times in the season, and I think that it is something that Tolkien brought up in his work too. That it's like, you know, it, beliefs and mantras and community can be used for good and they can be used for evil.
Yeah.
Like, all of these mantras could have been hypothetically used for good in the past, and then because they were good and people valued them, they kept using them until they started using them for bad, to contain, to manipulate, to isolate, and then it's not until the heroes in our stories start saying, no, this is what this ought to mean, that like they start to use those sayings in a positive light again, and it feels bad. It feels bad in the season because it's like, you've been saying this, but also this.
Yeah.
But I think it is a cool. I think it's a cool moral point for people to talk about. I think this is one of those things that, like you said, could it have been done better? Could it have been executed better? Yes. I'm still just always impressed that it works at all.
Let's see. I used to have I don't know where it is in here, but world building fantasy colloquialism. Wheels broke out from under me. I think that one works. That one, again,
Yeah.
makes sense. How does she know the Firefly deaths was an accident is my next thing. So she's talking to, Nori's talking to Poppy. And Poppy says Nori says that he's good. And Poppy's like, well, he killed those fireflies. She's like, that was an accident. Like, you don't know that.
Yep.
You murdered some fireflies. That was an accident. It's like, you don't know that.
Yeah, Nori's a real metagamer.
Yeah, right. So remember what I said about characters seeming to have perfect knowledge that shouldn't have perfect knowledge? Now I will say I do like the map heist scene where she's like hiding in his wagon under the thing and like trying to tell her which way to move her hand.
Mm-hmm.
I do like that bit.
I have general notes as themes, but
Yeah. Which again I think is why you like it and I don't.
yeah.
You look for the forest and you got the forest. I look for the trees and I didn't get the trees. Now we have Sadek reading the list to remember those who fell behind. Like, so they walked alone and you abandoned them and you followed the pirate rules of any man who falls behind gets left behind. When they were alive, we left them to die, but now every time they read someone's name, we say we wait for you.
Yeah.
Like, again, these are just so many blatantly contradictory things.
Yeah. I think it's supposed to be commentary and reflection on real world things, but yeah, you're right. It doesn't exactly endear you to the Harfoots.
But then we hear like causes of death. It's like one of them got stuck in the snow. Like you couldn't go help them get unstuck from the snow. Landslide I'll accept. Maybe like that's something you probably can't help.
Yeah.
Wolves, one of them dies from. Like, okay, maybe you can't fight off wolves. I feel like if you have zero defense against wolves, you wouldn't have survived as a species. Speaking of wolves, when is Chekhov's wolf from episode 1 coming? We're in episode 3 now. One is someone ate poison berries. And like, was she walking alone so no one could warn her not to eat those berries because they were poisonous? And then one of them died sculpting. We don't hear how that one ends, but that again seems like it could have been avoidable. And then again, at the end of every death, they say we wait for you. It's like now that they're dead, you wait for them, but you clearly didn't when they were alive.
Yeah.
We won't wait for you when you're in trouble, and then we'll claim that we wait for you after you're gone. And then somewhere in here, probably after.
I
Totally
love.
Not
So
Your
hold on.
Fault.
I really love Poppy's acting there because I think it does depict a lot of people the conflict in it all. Like she's saying these words to comfort herself, even though she's feeling guilty. She's thinking about her friend, right? And it is this comforting word. They say, "We wait for you." It doesn't mean that they are actually virtuous or that that's actually what they do. It's a way to comfort their own souls for surviving, right? They left their friends behind. They know it. They feel guilty for it, but they have this mantra that they tell themselves so that they feel better about themselves. And I think Poppy's facial acting and that one shot of her tearing up depicts so much of that, where she kind of like, she tries to smile after it comforts her, but that feeling is still there. So we really kind of know, like, yeah, these people, they don't feel great about this, but this is just kind of what they do, and this is what they've been doing.
Maybe they shouldn't be such evil people.
I mean, it would take some sort of hero. If only there was some sort of hero in this story to confront them about their worldviews.
Yeah. And then, like, it's funny that this guy got killed by bees because he was an idiot. Like, if you're dumb, it's fine that you got killed. Here, I was making a sculpture, and then it like cuts off. We don't hear how the sculptor died.
I don't know the constellations. I feel like someone out there has done a deep dive on the constellations and how they relate to each of the Maiar. But when I first saw that, I saw that it kind of looked like, I think it's supposed to be the wizard's hat, but it does also look like...
They call it the hermit's hat is what they call it.
Then that's 100% what it's supposed to be. But the first time I saw it, I remember I did briefly. I was like, that looks like two figures. Is he one of the blue wizards? But no, he's absolutely Gandalf. We all know it. So
one who says, we don't need friends, we need to survive, which is why they abandon anyone in need, because thinning our numbers gives us a better chance of survival.
That's just reconfirming what we suspect about them.
If you break the law, we leave you to die. Every punishment is capital. You're either perfect or you're dead.
Yep. That's why Nori's here to be the hero, to confront that ideology. But this is just, again, one of those scenes just to reaffirm, if you feel this way about the Harfoots, you are on the right path. And Nori is here to change their minds about it.
Fantasy world building colloquialisms. Nori has hair still to grow on her toes. As much hair to still grow on her toes as sense between her ears. I actually like that one. Again, like, it makes sense. It ties in the feet in a way that doesn't feel jarring or out of place. They can travel at the back of the caravan, so we're not going to leave you to die. We're just going to put you in an optimal position to die.
Yeah. It's just be like, we just don't want to see you when you die.
Yeah. Again, evil Harfoots. Those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it, is what I said. Oh, the past is dead. We either move forward or we die with it, which is the exact opposite of those who do not learn from the past are doomed to repeat it. So basically they're saying, like, oh, you should just ignore the past and move forward. It's like, no, you need to learn from the past.
Yeah. It is valid.
Yeah. Seems like an odd lesson to push as a universality.
Well, I mean, are they saying it in a... Are they holding up as a, this is a true ideal that represents good? Or are they holding it up as a, like, listen, this is something I believe that is bad? This is one of those scenes, I feel like everyone who is, like, below 30, if they watch this, they can totally be on Isildur's side. But then everyone who is, like, 35 up or whatever is gonna look at it and totally side with the dad. Just be like, listen, dude, just get your stuff together. Like, stop slacking off.
In most of these scenes, honestly, I think Elendil's a pretty good father.
Yeah.
There are occasional moments where I'm like, you could have handled that better. But as a whole, it's like, no, like, He's telling his children the right things, what they need to hear.
Mm-hmm.
I do think that they do their family dynamics fairly well.
Yeah.
So here he says...
She doesn't get enough time, but I really like Arian. Or, what's her name? The sister.
Yeah. Arian, Earian, I think. It's like you, like, swoop the A, Earian. I like the sister, too.
Yeah. I think she's just, like, one of those, like, rare good characters who's maybe persuaded by bad influences, but, like, you're like, oh, she's a good character.
Yeah, here, Elendil says, the past is dead, we either move forward or we die with it. So, like, yeah, it doesn't feel like he's doing it as a momentary thing. Mm-hmm. There's nothing for us on our western shores. Yeah. Elendil wants to go to the western shores. He's like, there's nothing for you there. The past is dead. Move forward or die with it.
Yeah.
Which, again, like, this is one moment where I'm like, Elendil, maybe that's not the lesson you want to be teaching your kids.
Yeah. Well, I mean, he's wrong here, but also, like, I don't think that's really what he believes. I think he's just trying to control his son, right? Like, I think that's why he's so pained saying it. Is like he's kind of like.
I don't think he's trying to control his son. I think he's trying to protect him. I think there's something dangerous out there.
Because like his other son died apparently, going out there. So like. Yeah, he just doesn't want his other son to die, doing the exact same thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But like he doesn't believe that because he himself is an elf lover.
I know, right? My next scene is when they're in jail, or my next note's when they're in jail, and they find out that Halbrand's the king of the Southlands.
King of the South.
King of the Southlands.
King of the North. King of the South.
Yeah, right. Do you know the appointment in Samara story?
No, I don't think so.
So, there's a man in Damascus, and one day he sees death on the streets, like the physical person.
Yeah.
And so like death looks at him, and he seems like surprised to see him there. Mm-hmm. The man packs up all of his stuff, moves to Samara. Mm-hmm. That evening, he's approaching the gates of Samara, and he sees death at the gates of Samara. And he says, like, okay, fine, you can have me. But tell me, when I saw you this morning in Damascus, why did you look so confused? And Death says, I was confused to see you this morning in Damascus because I had an appointment with you this evening in Samara. So, like...
yeah.
So, everything in this with, like, Galadriel trying to drag Halbrand back to the Southlands, I'm like, you're literally causing the thing you're trying to prevent.
Yes. 100%.
Yeah. And yeah, basically Halbrand does everything he can to avoid going back to Middle Earth. And again, if in that like last thing when he reveals himself to her, if he was like, I knew you were a fighter, so I fought you, like just something to make me believe, that what he was doing was manipulating her instead of just literally trying to escape his old life.
Yeah. I do think there's the mystery box. Unfortunately, I think hurt this series more than help it. It makes it more. Oh God! I think it has made it more entertaining to watch as someone who's familiar with the actual story, because you're not quite sure how it's going to shake out. You're not really sure where it's going, and I think it's actually hurt more the audience it was intended for, which was the new people who didn't know who the characters were, and they're like, okay, well, maybe this, like, who's the bad guy, who's the good guy? Like, people who aren't familiar with how the story actually plays out, air quotes, are hurt more by the mystery box because they all feel misled, or they feel, again, we brought this up in the first episode, but they feel like the Daenerys Targaryen effect, where it's like people who saw it coming were like, oh, I guess this is when they're choosing to do it, and it felt like a speed bump along a otherwise smooth road. But people who were either on the fence, weren't sure if it was going to happen, or were on the fence about it, or just had no clue. They're like, "What? I thought Danny was the good guy." Like total U-turn came out of nowhere for him. So I feel like a lot of this kind of mystery box. It's interesting to me because I don't know which Sauron. I don't absolutely know which Sauron they're going to choose to tell.
Yeah.
Whether he's going to be he's going to try to redeem himself, or if he's a 4D chess player. And I'm curious to see how they will tell his story and reveal what his motives were, or if they will, and retroactively. But unfortunately, I think because that's also because I already have trust in the writing.
Yeah.
Like, I already am on board with this, so I'm eager to see what they're gonna do. Other people who didn't get it, or I shouldn't say didn't get it, but people who are just like not interested in it, or felt like they were misled by the writing, they lost faith in it, and they're like, okay, well, I don't want to see you throw a bunch of curveballs at me and just pull stuff out of your butt, like, because for as far as I can tell, you're just making all this up, which essentially they are, but also they only feel tricked by huge budget Hollywood elites. They're like, they're just like, this just.
I don't even think it's people feel tricked. Again, it's most of what my complaints are. It's like, you say this, and then 2 scenes later, you completely go against, or even in the same scene, you completely go against it. So it's just so many times where it's like, you don't adhere to your own rules.
Yeah.
And those are the things that we find upsetting. In this scene, the only thing I have is like, why wasn't having the big guy drag the wagon plan A?
Yeah. So, okay. So, I actually have a question on this one, because after he came out, because of the reaction, I wasn't sure what to make out of this, because I agree, like, why wasn't he pulling the wagon in the first place? But also, like, based off of the reaction, I was like, oh, was he stowing away? Did they not know he was there? And then they never clear it up. Then they never say for sure whether or not he was stowing away, or they just had him stashed in the bag.
Yeah, I think he was just following them.
Oh, okay.
Because
with the rocks, right? Like, they stop and then the wagon goes like he's moving around or hopping out of it, right?
Mate.
So I wish they had, like, even just the mom, like, going like, Nori, you brought him? And he goes, I didn't know he was there, or something like that.
Like, so many places where it's like, if you just put in one line of dialogue, it fixes so many concerns or issues or whatever.
Yeah. I still got the point of the scene, but I do wish they would have clarified what was going on just a little bit more.
So they let it go, and then it rocks and they all run away.
Yeah.
If he was stowed away in the back of the wagon, like, I'd be livid at Nori for
Wait,
hiding.
hold on. Was he underneath? Hold on. Go back. I think he was literally underneath it. Did I just not catch that before? Hold on. I'm going to go back to the wide. Look underneath.
Yeah.
He's underneath. Okay, so
he's like crawling out from under the wagon. Yeah.
So he was stowing away. He was literally holding on to the bottom of the wagon.
So it's like, Nori, you horrible person. Your father with a broken ankle is trying to drag this wagon, and you stow an extra 200 pounds under the wagon.
Well, it doesn't seem like she knew.
I don't think she knows he was there either, but
yeah. Okay, so mystery solved. He was a stowaway underneath the wagon. I never noticed that before.
But again, like, she suddenly has the realization of, like, oh, we have a
big guy,
big strong person. Make him try it. Like, why didn't you have this thought back at camp? Again, it's another example of we're having, the conversation at the wrong point in the journey.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Like maybe if we showed them just leaving camp.
Yeah.
Um,
Instead of out in the wilderness wherever they are.
yeah, maybe.
Also, they are definitely walking alone. The rest of that caravan is way out in front of them.
Yeah.
Alright, so here we have the actual fight. The orcs don't like the sun again. Oh, here we go.
So
Yeah.
cool.
So, like, now this orc has his face out in the sun. He's okay. They've got their arms and legs exposed, and they're fine. His head burned a little bit, but his arm is in the sunlight. Doesn't care. His arms are in the sunlight, and it's fine. Then they start hacking on all this stuff. So are the orcs vampires or not? Here I actually like the tug of war because it's like they're trying to pull the orcs into the sun, and the orcs are trying to pull them out of the sun.
Mm-hmm.
So here I like the tug of war bit, and then we have the Stelios breaking the canopy. So in the movie 300, Stelios does this like big jumping, flying through the air,
Yeah.
cuts the guy's arm off, and that's like exactly what he does here.
Yeah.
Big jumping, flying through the air. So this is a point where, again, I think in the storyboarding room or writer's room, it was like, oh, I've got this cool idea of this guy flies through the air and cuts down a canopy, putting the orcs in the sunlight, so then they like get burned. But again, you have to do so many things that don't make sense leading up to it. Like, why aren't they digging a tunnel anymore? Why are they now digging a trench? Why are they cutting all the trees down instead of keeping some of the shade? Where is all of this tarp shade coming from? And then it only knocks the canopy back like 20 feet. It's not like it knocks the whole thing down and causes a big problem. But now, because it's only 20 feet more of sunlight, it's a huge issue. So it's like, there are so many things where it's, oh, this would be a cool moment. Let's just ignore everything that we need to get to this cool moment. And then they release the warg that looks nothing like the wolves from earlier, so we can't even give them the benefit of the doubt there.
I mean, we know why they're digging a tunnel. We know why they're digging a tunnel.
A trench,
Or
not
a trench.
a tunnel.
Yeah, sorry, a trench.
Yeah. But again, I think it should be a tunnel. A tunnel will serve the same purpose of moving the water, and it will prevent them from being out in the sunlight. They were digging tunnels before. Why now are they no longer digging tunnels? We have a precedent for tunnel digging. Why are we now digging a trench instead of tunnels?
I think the tunnel, again, I'm justifying it just for the sake of argument, really, but the reason I bought it, I guess I should say, is because the tunnels were small. They felt like a single man kind of situation. And I mean, like, digging a big tunnel, you can, it's so like, just if you want to move that much water, you need a big channel. So you could build a big tunnel, but the weight of the dirt would cause it to cave in a lot more.
But they have to build support structure to hold up their canopy anyway.
Yeah,
So why not build support structure? And the support structure looks pretty robust. So it's like, why not just build support structure for your tunnel?
I'm not 100% sure, but I think I like it for cool factor. Maybe it's not 100% rational, but I think it makes for some fun. So
yeah, I have pros, looks epic, cons, and then just a list of
yeah, just
like, which is again exactly the problem, is because clearly someone went, let's rule of cool this and not care about anything else leading up to it. And again, with the whole like digging a bigger tunnel thing, they don't actually have to dig a big tunnel. They can CG pretend they dug a big tunnel.
No, what do you mean, like?
I mean, in production.
Oh, in production. No, yeah, I'm not talking about. Yes, because that would absolutely not be done.
Yeah.
As a set, but no, I just mean, like, I'm just trying to
look
check.
at how thick those logs are on the side. Like, you could build a support structure for a tunnel with logs that thick.
Yeah.
And then it would justify more of why they cut all those trees down.
Gosh, I don't know, man. Maybe that's one of those things. It is just not rational, but it is cool.
Mm-hmm.
I did also love. I feel like someone on this show is a Warhammer fan, just because the way the orc says "Wad, release the wad."
Yeah.
I'm just like, yes, someone out there is a Warhammer fan. And it's like later on we see that the Numenorian armor looks a lot like High Elf armor.
Mm-hmm.
And they call them knife ears, which I know is also from a number of franchises,
yeah.
but that is also in Warhammer. So it's like one of those things. It's like I feel like somebody on this show is a Warhammer fan, and I support it.
Yeah, and then my last note is Adar Sauron? And then
Correct.
Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to be thinking,
that
right?
is what you're supposed to be thinking. Yeah. Again, anytime anyone even makes like a slightly not happy face,
Yeah.
I'm like, are they Sauron?
Or they look over their shoulder. Anytime someone does one of these, where they should,
Yeah.
they're like evil, evil.
Closing thoughts on episode 3?
I think this is. I had a lot of fun with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's because I was already on board, but I respect the people who didn't like episode 3 as much. I know the first 2 episodes, golden in my book, but then as the season goes on, it gets a little bit tougher, and we've just talked about the world and the philosophy, and now we start to get into like the action and the plot. Like we've established what we're talking about, and now we have to watch the events happen. And I think that is, a lot of people have criticized it. I'm gonna continue to do my best again with just like in season or episode 3 here. Do my best to talk about what I took from it and what I think was intended from each scene, but I do think that like later on, the later episodes get harder to follow, and in my book, my takeaway is that they get harder and harder to follow the intent, which that's rough. And especially if you're not on board at this point, like it just makes it harder the further you go down to it.
So again, I think most of my thoughts can be perfectly wrapped up in that last scene with him hitting that canopy with the axe. It's like there are so many things where they went, oh, this line sounds cool, or this action looks cool, or this thing would be cool. And then it's like, okay, how do we get to these cool points rather than saying, let's tell a good cohesive story and find cool points along the way. Or even like, oh, I have an idea for something cool, let's see where it naturally fits. And that's where a lot of it has issues for me. And episode 3 was kind of like a hard nail in the coffin of, I went into this, I said in episode 1, like I went into this optimistic and hopeful and looking forward to it, and then I was just disappointed. And then it got a little worse. And then in this, that's when it really sunk in of just, oh, the issue I have with this is because it feels so much about the moment and not about the story. And that I think is where you and I come to disagreements on this, is because you're looking at, I've said before, you look at the forest, I'm looking at the trees. And so I can't accept the forest because the trees aren't in the right places or the trees aren't the right trees.
I think
and that's a metaphor that works. I'm sorry.
Yeah. I think that's obviously. I think that's not a perfectly correct way that I agree with to look at it, but I think the details, the kind of details I'm looking for, are very different because I'm in a totally different genre. You're watching for a different genre than what I'm watching for, so the details that I care about, the trees that I'm looking at, are the trees that I think they meant to paint, and the trees that you're looking for are the trees that are not there. You're like, where are all the pine trees in this forest? I'm like, this is not a pine forest, bro. So I don't necessarily disagree with what you're seeing, because there's obviously a problem with distracting, incoherent parts of the show, because like it happened to so many people, and you
70% of viewers that didn't finish the show.
There you go. So like it's obviously a problem with the show that some people just did not gel with it. So this is one of those things. Is like, we go back to what I said in the first episode, where I'm just like, I'm glad that they spent billions of dollars making a show just for me, but like that's a bad business practice. So I think they really need to spend some more time testing and making sure that things hit with people, and checking for things that are distracting, pulling people out, and kind of like, listen to your audience a little bit. This first season was made in a closed box. A lot of people didn't even know that it was coming out until we had warning about it, but I suspect it was pretty well done by the time they even started releasing PR about it. But you can imagine the amount of secrecy that was done around the set. They probably didn't have a lot of screeners. Everybody who was there looking at the scripts was on board with the philosophy. They knew the message. And that's really what I'm trying to get at. It's like, when you know the message, and that's what you're looking for, it's there. But if you don't know where even to begin to like, let me follow what you're trying to say here, it's just like the point of entry is too high on this show. It needs to be. We need to. Not saying that I don't want people to walk away thinking that I'm calling anyone dumb. It can definitely feel that way, and I apologize. But like, it's just that like, it's the wrong style of storytelling for an audience.
I think the expectation is for you to just accept what you're given, and that's where the issue is. I think that
Is it though? I disagree with that fundamentally, because so much of what they're shown are like Sauron being deceptive. Like, if we just accept everything that's there without thinking about it, it's confusing. So that's where it goes back to that thing. It's like, I honestly think that they thought people would come in here and watch this show like they were taking a literature class. Like, they would come in.
I couldn't disagree more.
Sure.
I think that if this show is something that you have on casually, then it's fine. But I think, because that's where I get hicked up with it, is because I look at every single line that they say, and it's like, okay, well, this line doesn't gel with what you said 2 lines before. You're contradicting yourself within the context of this scene. What you're seeing here, like, again, like with the Halbrand in front of the Queen thing, where he's like, well, what if we stayed? It's like, no, she already told you you're gonna stay. There's no reason for you to like offer to stay. Well, what if we give you time to change your mind? You have no power here. You have no leverage. This dialogue doesn't happen. This is not a conversation that gets had. And that's where it is for me, because in my own writing, like, I scrutinize everything so much to make sure that it makes sense within itself.
Sure, yeah.
That when I see things that don't make sense within themselves, I can't buy in.
And there you have it. Episode 3.
Episode 3.
Just a few more to go.
Just 5 more to go.
But they're so enjoyable. It's going to be an absolute pleasure. You're going to breeze through them. The MacGuffin's beard is going to be much grayer by the time we get done with the series.
Yes, it's not just going to be this little patch. It's going to be the whole...
What? That's actually... Yeah, that's actually why he shaved his head, is because he pulled out so much of it.
Yeah, I pulled out my hair watching this show. No, I was going bald before this show. This show didn't help, but I was going bald before.
All right, thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. If you have comments, comment. If you don't have comments, comment anyway. It's good for us. If you hate us, tell us how much. Any engagement's good for us. All right, have a good time. We'll work on a closing. It'll get better, I promise. I can't promise that.